Spencer Maybee. Welcome, man.
Thanks, man. Thank you for having me. This is cozy. This is COVID cozy.
It's been a little bit. Long time no see. I think last time I ran into you, I was scouting for Baroness Von Sketch Show, and I just happened to run into you on the side of the road. I was scouting in your neighborhood for something, and I just bumped into you. We had just finished, I think, Letterkenny. I don't know if it was season 1 or 2. Were you there for season 2 as well?
I was up there season 2, and then it must have been around then. You were on Gladstone, weren't you? Just behind the park.
Something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It was after Letterkenny season 2, and we bumped into each other there.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's been a while, and your connection just got dynamite.
Oh,
it
sweet.
was
Okay,
it was slacking
LTE
there.
right now.
It was slacking there for a bit, but now it's dynamite duty. So Spencer Maybee, director, actor, crew, because you do a lot of things. Well, you have some funny actor things that I'd like to bring up, and we might as well jump into it. So, well, we were just talking about it. So, Letterkenny season 1, you had a small role as Troy Dahmer, kind of the big city prick. And were you the first fight actually in the entire show too? And
I was. I broke Wayne's new fight cherry in that season. He had sort of been holding off, and then I broke in. Yeah.
So that was pretty sweet to get a role. You were already up there. You had the right look. How they dressed you up kind of reminds me
Thanks,
of. Well, what I mean is you're a tall guy, right? And you've kind of got that strapping presence that it would be a believable fight that you're a big city prick.
You're so kind. I'm pretty convinced that Jared and Jacob were like, he kind of looks like a Toronto douchebag, doesn't he? Yeah. Let's see if we'll take the Toronto douchebag role. Like, I'm pretty sure that's how it went down. I was like, well, they put me in the tightest pants I'd ever worn that day, but now I've never gone back.
Well, the way I saw your character is kind of whoever did wardrobe. I liked it. It was simple, but it kind of reminded me of Biff from Back to the Future a little bit. The 50s Biff, when he's got the fedora and the scarf, and I think maybe the leather jacket. And I was kind of like, oh, I'm getting a Biff vibe here. You've kind of got a good 50s Biff look, actually.
Got a bit of a Biff look, a little underbite. Some I've been told military cheekbones. I don't even know what that means. But so the way that came about was I was up there working with the digital team, and we were shooting a whole bunch of sketches. I think that the New Metric guys had they didn't know where this was going to go, and they weren't sure if it was going to go the way of a usual comedy. I think where like if they got a second season, they might bring in a room, they get a bunch of writers, and they might blood a few directors on it. So I was up there, and I know they brought in Theo, Teddy Kim to do some more of the sketches. And they had, I think, like a dozen or 16 different scripts, and Jared and Jacob had kind of gone over these short scripts. They're like 2-3 minute kind of things. And at the end of it, I think they only greenlit about half of them. And we got to shoot them. We got to work with the regular cast. We had our small team. There was, Wes Legg was our DP. Oh man, Dave, Big Dave, losing my last name right now, but we had sound like small strip down crew, and Peter Harvey was like producing us and running us, and we did a lot of the sort of behind the scenes stuff, and then if we could find a window in the schedule that wasn't boarded, because we weren't allowed to be on the board, but we'd pull the cast away strictly on their own, if they wanted to, if they were up for it or not, and then we'd throw them pages and be like, okay, here's like a 4-page script. Can you like memorize this by tomorrow? We want to shoot in the afternoon when you're supposed to, when you're back from lunch, but not on set yet. So we did a bunch of those, and while I was up there, I think Jared and Jacob just looked at me and they're like, Toronto douchebag, get him in there. And they asked me, have you ever done any acting? I was like, yeah, I'm still an actor member, because I had done previously. I think 2007 was kind of the last time I really was out auditioning and trying to do acting and stuff like that. But it was such a treat, because I'd read all the scripts and I knew the character, and Troy was such a prick, and he had one of my favorite lines. I think he said something along the lines of like, I've fucked your girl more times than you've had a hot meal. And I wanted to say those words. It was great. And then he threw me in that big pile of garbage. And what people may not see, I don't know if Crave is like that high def, but there is a stuffed bear in that pile of garbage that has a condom up its ass. I don't know if anybody had like done the courtesy of using that condom before they poked it in there, but that's the art department really fucking giving her. It was amazing.
So, and it was the kind of show where they were generous, kind of giving roles to people who were around and stuff like that, who kind of fit the bill. I know they asked me at one point if I had ever gotten to fights, and my answer was no. So I didn't get those roles where you should be fighting.
Why did you lie? You should have been like, yeah, no, totally. You would have been awesome in those fights.
No, not at all. My acting even hadn't even developed. I'd only been maybe doing it for like a year or two professionally at that point. And I know I would have been brutal at that.
But your hair in those slow-mo sequences would have just been fucking golden. I just think that would have been amazing. Am I swearing too much for this, or is this pretty normal? Oh,
okay. And what was the other one? And then there was one that it was Jared's buddy, the ostrich fucker. Before Jacob knew that Jared's buddy was coming to play that role, they were like, oh, he'd be good for who was it? The ginger, that guy? Because I kind of had a red beard. When my beard grows out, it kind of gets red. So
yeah.
So that got brought up at one point, but
I don't know, man. They were looking at me like Toronto douchebag. They were probably looking at you like ostrich fucker. I'm kidding.
Well, the thing is you had previous acting experience, which was good. I looked at your IMDb there, and you had one kind of funny one because I just have been watching it recently. The old version is the X-Files. I went back. I've never really seen the X-Files, and so I went back and started watching from like '93 or whenever it started, and I'm in about season 2 right now, and it still holds up like in quality and entertainment and everything. But I see you're in the 2001 or 2008 one. X-Files, I Want to Believe, and you played. Now you play the character's name is kind of hilarious. Now I want to say it's pronounced Farron, but it's spelled Fear On, or how is it pronounced? Blair? Yeah. What was it?
Blair Fearon, I guess. I mean, I don't even remember the last name ever really coming up into the script. Like, I don't know, maybe like Gillian Anderson kind of mumbles it like Mr. Fearon or something like that. But it's really strange because for the most part, like the Troy Dahmer character is kind of typical to a lot of the roles that I would play as like cops, agents, soldiers, douchebags. That's kind of like, that was my wheelhouse. I wanted to do other stuff, but I got to look. You can't fight that. And so, but this was actually like one of those few that kind of departed from that. I played a religious father of a kid who is in a religious hospital. In the movie, like Scully's no longer working for the FBI. She's a doctor at a religious hospital, and she's got a child patient who is ostensibly terminal. She has a couple of treatments that she wants to try, but the family are really getting close to the point where they're ready to let go of the kid and give the kid up to their God and say goodbye and move into palliative care. And that's kind of the direction that the hospital board is moving towards on that case. But Scully, she wants to believe. Whoa, see what I did there? And she wants to believe that there's like a treatment that could save this kid. And so, like, I had 3 scenes with Gillian Anderson where she's trying to talk to me and my wife in the story about like her hopes, and at a certain point we're kind of like, yeah, look, the treatments are really painful and we just don't want to put him through more pain. We've come to terms with the fact that his disease is terminal and we're going to let him go. This is kind of beautiful. It's a really weird movie. It's intense and it's really cool. And Chris Carter is super awesome.
Did you book that role in Toronto and then they shot it in BC? Was that it?
No, I was living in Vancouver. I got into film. I was born and raised in Toronto. Ran away from home when I was 17. Well, I didn't run away. I moved away from home when I was 17 to go to university in Victoria. Did a degree in poetry, really weird. Also studied film while I was there and got really into it. Moved to Winnipeg to work. Winnipeg, just on a lark, didn't know anybody there. To work in the publishing industry for a while. Got bored, it's moving slow. I wanted to work in the creative industries, but I wanted to work on something moving fast. And at the time they had a really juicy tax credit. So the gap between aspiring amateurs and practicing professionals was none at all. I did like a CMPA internship. I got them to send me to film school in the States for 7 weeks. I did this like weird condensed program at the Rockport International Workshops. It's known mostly for photography, but there were a lot of like really cool film people doing film programs there. Tammy Riker, who's like a DP, she did high art and a couple of other things. I think she worked on Carnival. She was up there just doing a photography workshop, and I was there doing work study to pay for my room and board. It was a great way to do film school. I had like 2 roommates. They were awesome. Thabo Moreira, South African first AD, and this guy, Samuel Clover Murphy, who's about 5'0" and buff as all fucking. He was a former ballerino, just up from Boston. Like, it was the weirdest class. Thabo passed away a little while ago. He was in a car accident in South Africa, but he had this beautiful sort of ring in his voice when he would call set. He'd be like, "Everybody happy, everybody ready, and roll camera." It was like, it was the best. And I can't help it, but every time I'm on set,
everybody happy. That's great.
Everybody ready, and roll camera. Yeah, he's the best. But so I was up there, and at first we were doing like work study to pay for our room and board, and work study was just like digging ditches and moving furniture and painting walls and stuff like that. But they found out that me and Sammy, my other roommate, had we had acting experience, and they're like, "Oh shit, we have all these workshops, and we don't have people to stand in front of lights." And we're like, "I will do that," like instead of lifting all this heavy shit and sweating in the hot sun, like I will totally sit in on another like professional workshop and basically get a free workshop. So I got to meet Tammy Riker among other people and do all sorts of weird shit. I actually did a scene study with Stana Kotick, from Castle. Do you know that show, Castle?
I've heard of this show.
Anyway, she was one of the leads. I'm totally drawing a blank on the guy's name, but the other lead was the guy from Firefly. Super blank.
Nathan
anyway,
something?
Yeah.
Nathan Fillion?
There's the guy. Anyway, she ended up on Castle with Nathan Fillion. But long before that, I was in a scene study thing with her, and the director was a guy named John Covert, who was like an LA guy, I guess. Anyway, just weird. I had to pretend like I could play the guitar. I'm terrible at guitar. I couldn't play for shit.
Hey, so Nathan Fillion, is, you were saying you get typecasted for military roles and stuff like that, which is hilarious. I don't know what my type. I don't know if I'm just like big oaf or something like that or what, but
I'm still going with Miami Vice bad guy. Like that is that.
That is great.
That'd be dope.
Yeah, the stash sideburns, 70s look or whatever I got going on too is hilarious. But Nathan Fillion's the type of guy who's like just has like the nicest face. Like when I see that guy, he's in like some cop show or something. I'm like,
is he in Rookie? No, what's the one that he's in? Is it Rookie Blue or some shit like that?
I don't think it's that. I think it's something else. But it's just like, come on, man. I don't believe this guy for a second.
He looks like a nice dad. Like
yeah.
I feel like he should be doing nice dad. Anyway, I mean, like he might not want to do those roles. I was going on a really long rant. Anyway, after I did all that shit, I moved back to Winnipeg. I'd done this workshop, volunteered on one short film before I got my first gig as a spark on a movie of the week about behind the scenes of Three's Company. Then, like before I even finished that gig, I got offered a gig doing rigging gripping for an Enron movie of the week, and it was like a huge pay bump. So I was like, okay, I'll become a rigging grip, and then I got my first paid acting gig in a scene opposite Diane Keaton on another Lifetime movie of the week, where she was like a single mother, lost her job, turns to dealing drugs to keep her kids in basketball shoes. And I play a meth cook who sort of like gets in a fight with her over missing product, because in that scene it's kind of revealed that she is now using, not just selling, which is great because I mean Diane Keaton looks like she's a total meth head.
Yeah, what a great role for you.
It was dope. It was awesome. I was terrible, but it was awesome. I feel like that probably accurately describes a lot of my acting. So if you're looking for some fun moments,
what came first? Was it the acting bug or the directing thing or the crew side?
I don't know. I think writing and acting, like way back, little kid, me and my cousins and my brother, we used to like put on plays in our parents' basement where we just like run around and like beat each other up and shit. But then in high school, I got really into writing, a little bit of acting. It was kind of chicken and egg. It just kind of kept like, I found when I was on the West Coast, I was doing acting, writing, and directing, and I found that there was something really healthy about that crop rotation. I found that anytime I was writing something, it was always well informed by my directing experiences and my acting experiences. And anytime I was on set as an actor, I always felt like my writing and directing experiences really kind of like helped feed into that. And then whenever I've been directing, like I love actors, and I really have a lot of respect for the craziness that is what they have to be able to do. I mean, I remember like when Christian Bale was getting sort of like brought on the carpet because he yelled at that DP or whatever, and I was like, come on, man, this guy is standing there on a set pretending there's like aliens that don't exist yet because the CG department hasn't created them for him, and he has to like be in it and believe it. And there's some fucking guy walking around in the background. Like I get his anger in that moment, you know. I totally feel that. And but aside from that, I mean, like the kinds of things that actors have to do to their bodies, you know. Like I was, when I was living in Winnipeg, I worked on a show called Seven Times Lucky. It was a Gary Yates feature with Kevin Pollak. Alex Ponovic was in it. There were a couple of other people in it, and we were shooting outside in fucking Winnipeg in the middle of winter. And a friend of mine who had a role in the show, she got fucking hypothermia, you know. And like, I don't know, actors have to do a lot of crazy shit. I went to see a really beautiful dance performance by, I want to say, French Canadian guy, David St. Pierre, something like that. But it was called Un peu de tendresse, bordel de merde, a little tenderness for crying out loud. And it was like, there's this scene where these dancers are on stage and they just slap themselves in the face like 40 times, and everybody in the audience is like, good God, when is this gonna stop? Like, it's starting to hurt me watching them hurt themselves. And I was like, that is, I think, the performer's existence, right? Like what is demanded of them is to do this, is to exhibit pain for us to watch and experience vicariously, so that we can suffer a little and then go home without the consequence of the suffering, but the learning, maybe. I don't know. That's deep. I'm not even smoking weed right now, man.
I know what you're saying with the Christian Bale thing. I mean, I can see it from all sides. But again, it must be really hard trying to convince people, because from Christian Bale's point of view, the movie has invested to him to convince essentially 500 million people that this is happening, because that's about, or whatever, however many people are going to see this movie worldwide. He needs to convince essentially each and every one of them without a doubt, right? Which is a very hard thing to do. So
yeah.
No, so I get it all.
Yeah, it makes you want to like sell Nespresso machines or some shit like that, right? It's a little easier.
Yeah, imagine the pressure. One interesting thing I saw, you were stand-in for a Matthew Modine 2004 movie called The Winner. Or wait, The Winner, and then
The Winning Season.
The Winning Season, 2004. And it's about a young lad dreams of playing with the great Honus Wagner in his 1909 World Series duel with Hall of Famer Ty Cobb. So how old were you for that, and what was that like? Fuck. Matthew Modine, hilarious. That's awesome.
Yeah, like I have zero recollection of how old I was. I mean, I was Winnipeg, so that would have been what, 2000 to 2004 or somewhere in there. So that would have put me in my like
in your 20s or something.
I would have been like 20, early 20s. And I was standing in for him. It was the best standing gig of all time. My other stand-in, funny Letterkenny connection. So Dan Skeen, Dan Skeen stunts Letterkenny, beautiful man, amazing dude, is from a long line of stunt guys, including Rick Skeen, who I think Rick's his dad. And is Rick his dad? Anyway, one of the Skeen brothers, not Dan's dad, but his uncle, I guess, was the other stand-in on that show. And we just fucking sat on a baseball diamond for 2 weeks in the sun, just chirping and chatting. And Matthew Modine never wanted to leave set. He's like, I'd be like, okay, you know, they'd be like, okay, you know, like first team can relax, second team, and I'd step up, and he'd be like, yep, no, sit back down. I want to play some ball. I sat and read like I was into Hemingway at the time. I read 4 Hemingway novels while I was on set there, like trying to, you know, like I'd step up and he'd sit me back down, man. That guy likes working. He likes being on his feet. I think it's probably something to do with the 100 takes that he would do with Kubrick on Full Metal Jacket. He was just like, oh yeah, no, this is the easiest job in the world. I just have to stand here and throw a baseball. But the female lead in that was one of the girls from Sex and the City. And
Kim Cattrall?
yeah, no,
No.
who was the prude? What was the actress that played the prude? No,
Sarah Jessica? Is that her?
No,
I don't know the other ones. I don't know the other ones.
Not the redhead, the brunette. Anyway, but that was a fun time. Winnipeg is a great place to make movies because the people, they have great crews there, really nice people, and it's an interesting town. It's got its own kind of weird history and stuff like that, but there's a lot of good people there. My wife is from Winnipeg. A lot of good people are from Winnipeg.
Boom. Matthew Modine, I believe I used to watch a movie. I was obsessed with a movie called Cutthroat Island that I think he was in with Gina Davis, a pirate movie. I was obsessed with.
I feel like I remember that poster, right, with the big skull over the island or something like that.
Yeah, I think that was it. It actually has one great idea that I would love to just steal and put in a movie somewhere. And that's basically that a guy had a treasure map tattooed. It's probably been done a million times, but Cutthroat's the last time I saw it. He had a treasure map tattooed on his head back in the day and let his hair grow out. But then when he died, he's like, "Scalp me!" And they're like, and they took it. And I was like, "Holy shit!"
That is.
I'm like, that's pretty
cool.
badass. Yeah.
That is really cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, screw using that in a movie. I mean, just do that. Just bury some shit in your backyard. Print like
it's
a
the new
Google map
geocaching.
No joke. I was in Wilberforce, Ontario this past weekend, and it is the geocaching capital of Ontario. Who knew? Tons of shit just lying around.
Well, underground, right? Or what? In trees or in the water?
On little islands, yeah, buried in geocaching. It's like a mystery every minute.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Whatever. If you're in like a little treasure hunt. One other thing here: researcher position. 3 episodes on true pulp murder. What goes into the research position into true pulp murder?
I mean, that's kind of underplaying. Okay, so True Pulp Murder was production of a company called Make Believe Media. Lynn Booth was this wonderful woman from Vancouver who I knew, who brought me on to do some research, not just for that project, it was for some other things and do some writing on some other development projects. And one of the shows that got going was this show called True Pulp Murder that she did a lot of work with TV Tropolis. Her friend Michael Gent was an exec for TV Tropolis, and which was a channel at the time that I think was owned by CTV. And she did a bunch of stuff with them. They bought this show, and it was kind of like, it was just like true crime homicide stories, but there were like aspects, instead of doing reenactment, they did this sort of like pulp graphic novel style animation interpretation stuff, which was really kind of cool. And so my job was to find the stories. I was working with a guy named Larry Raskin, really, really cool guy who was kind of show running it. But we didn't really have any of those kind of traditional titles. I researched all of the episodes. I wrote 3 of the episodes. So that researcher should be writer, but I mean, I don't know how IMDb works. But my favorite episode that I got to research was like this 3rd act hook was that because he had dwarfism, lividity set in at a different rate, which meant that they'd made a mistake. Lividity is like when the body starts to turn purple after it dies. They made a mistake in determining the time of death because they adjudged his lividity to have come on like with a person without dwarfism. And they hadn't factored in that his dwarfism accelerated. I think it was accelerated the onset of lividity and would have changed the time of death. So they had a totally different suspect based on this bad sort of like calculation. Anyway, it was really cool. And I was working with a guy named Mark Mendelson who does a lot of, he's based in Toronto now. There's a lot of, he was a former homicide cop. And he was one of the, I mean, I talk to homicide cops all over Canada, but you can't talk to current cops because they can't talk about current things, or they can't speak while they're currently employed. But once they retire, you can talk to them about all kinds of crazy shit. And so I got to chat with him about a whole bunch of these weird cases that were like unusual and mysterious and difficult to solve.
Yeah, I thought maybe they sent you out into the field to commit some murders to give them some storylines. Like, how would the guy get away with this, Spence? We need some
like, let me test drive that. Hang on. Where's my cat?
We'll give you a researcher credit. You want to get in the film biz, don't you?
That was about it. Yeah, that's how what's that line from State and Maine? It's like, what's an associate producer credit? It's what you give your assistant instead of a raise, you know? Yeah. Man.
So you did something similar, 8 episodes on The Next Great Chef, researcher on that. Are these early writer positions that they call researcher? Is that it?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, like Next Great Chef, I did 2 seasons of that. Season 1, season 1, it was just a sort of cooking competition show that was based on an existing competition. The Canadian Culinary Federation had an apprentice competition where basically chefs would nominate their apprentices. They'd go off and have this big cook-off, and they'd have a big final competition at the Canadian Culinary Federation's annual general meeting kind of thing. And so we managed to kind of co-opt the competition for this really cool cooking reality show. It was neat. I learned a lot about cooking and it changed my life. Met some really cool people on. Ian Kerr was the DP. He's a really cool guy. He DP'd Making the Cut, the hockey reality show that I worked on, which is kind of like the first job that I got when I moved to Vancouver from Winnipeg. But for The Next Great Chef, both seasons I was a story editor. I was responsible for one kitchen. We had another story editor, Kelly McClugan, I think was her name, and she was responsible for the other kitchen. She was more senior than I was, but basically we just kind of like track what was going on in the kitchen, make a whole bunch of notes with time code, and then at the end of the day, we'd sort of build a story that had some drama. It was always like, oh, did anybody almost cut themselves? Like, you know, it was one of those shows. A lot of fun though. Andy Levine was like one of the producers on it, and Eddie Osgian and a guy named Nick Verstraeten, all just awesome dudes. Andy Levine worked on Making the Cut. That was my connection with that. And he's like a post super in Vancouver who's like got his own company, and it does a lot of bigger shows now. I don't have like a quick credits of what he's been up to lately, but he's a wonderful and beautiful human. I mean, he traveled all over Canada for the Making the Cut, that hockey reality show. It was the one with Scotty Bowman and Mike Keenan were the 2 coaches. They had way too many players. I think they brought in 72 players that they scouted from all over Canada, and they tried to narrow it down. It was a great idea, and the thing is it blew up a little bit because it was right when the strike happened, and so it was the only hockey on TV. So people who were really desperate for hockey got a little bit of a fix if they watched the reality show, but then they had to watch the reality show, not just the hockey. So it was a trade-off.
There's one kind of reality, well, not really reality show, but I wish they would bring back Dinner for Five. I was a huge fan of that show. Jon Favreau. It was just like Jon Favreau and like actors and HBO. It used to be available on YouTube. I watched like all of them. They're so good. And it was great actually watching it. It hasn't been available for a while, but say like 3 or 4 years ago, even a lot of these episodes were from like 10 years prior to that. So you'd hear these people talk about movies that they were on. And you could be like, oh, they're talking about this movie or they're talking about that. And sometimes they'd name people, sometimes they wouldn't, but you get a lot of insider. I loved it. I sent Jon Favreau a tweet. I'm like, you got to start this up again. I don't know.
Man. I've never seen it, but that sounds like a great show. Like, so it's all just a bunch of actors hanging out, talking.
They all have a connection. Cooking? No, but they eat at like a different fancy LA or like New York restaurant every time, like a 4 or 5 course meal. And it's basically a podcast before a podcast. So you go, you sit down for 3 or 4 hours, you have a meal, you have some drinks, and you're with 4 or 5 other people. and you all have a connection to Jon Favreau or a connection to each other. So you all did a movie together, or you all did a movie with Jon, or you all did a movie of the same theme, or you did a couple, whatever your connection may be. So it's a lot of fun.
That sounds great. That sounds good. I
Yeah.
mean, that kind of has a similar vibe to this, except there's just two of us. Like, this is like My Dinner with Andre, the podcast, only with
Pretty
Ian.
much. And it was actually right
And we're
before I
not eating.
started this. Yeah. Well, hey, I wouldn't mind. I'm still figuring out what everything is. At first I kind of thought it was going to be a lot bigger. And then once I started figuring it out, I'm like, oh no, it's just kind of like, I'm getting film people on, behind the scenes stuff. I'm still figuring it out as I go. But I would love to have a dinner for five, expand to a dinner for five or something like that. And do the same way. And do it for Canada, but you'd infuse in, obviously anyone could come, but a Canadian one, because obviously they did theirs in LA. So with Toronto one. People. Yeah. So, but you gotta, you get people who are involved in like the CSA. Did you either win or you were nominated? This is a good segue, anyways, because I was just bringing up some of your more obscure stuff, just because that's the stuff I kind of like to talk about, to just hear what those experiences were like. But you have a couple CSAs nominations for, this is like your heavy duty workload, 109 episodes, directing, and probably some other things, maybe some writing as well, and other things for a web series called Carmilla.
Yeah. Carmilla was, so I got a call from my agent on a Tuesday. Hey, do you want to meet with Smoke Bomb, Shaftesbury's digital department tomorrow? They got this project. It's like, yeah, sure. What are the materials? They're like, oh, it's, they want to do something like Lizzie Bennet Diaries, which, if you're not familiar with it, which you probably aren't, was like a vlog adaptation of, I want to say it was Emma. I think it was an Austen book. I think it was Emma. And it became really popular. And so they wanted to do something kind of similar, but they wanted to adapt the Joseph Sheridan Le Fanu novel from, I want to say 1825 or 18 something, I can't remember the date, but predated Dracula by 25 years, and it was a lesbian vampire novella. And I was like, cool. And they're like, yeah, it's kind of Welcome to Night Vale-ish and a little bit season 1 of Buffy. And they threw down all these references. They're like, oh, okay. So I didn't sleep. I stayed up all night. I read the novella. I listened to a whole bunch of episodes of Welcome to Night Vale to get a sort of sense of it. And I rewatched, like, I hadn't watched Buffy in a million years. And so I rewatched a bunch of season 1 stuff. And I went into the meeting, and I don't remember anything about the meeting because I was so sleep-deprived. But I was really excited because it sounded like a really cool project. The whole conceit was they wanted to do 36 episodes, all from one camera angle. And I had been, at the time, I've been doing some work. I was doing some freelance session directing for a commercial casting place in Toronto. Really fun way to, like, just hang out with actors and goof around and do some fun stuff and kind of have a peek into the commercial filmmaking world, because commercials are so very different from TV and film, even though they're kind of, I mean, they use the same tools, but they're doing something very different. And I'd gone from there out to BC. I did a season of capture directing for FIFA, which is like my favorite video game of all time. I'm a big soccer fan, and I got to do this capture directing where I was basically using the in-game instant replay tool to set cameras and keyframes on, like, really cool action that this 18-year-old Norwegian kid was pulling off, to sort of showcase all the new features of the next video game. And this was like the year after they'd released their game trailer with in-game content only. So it's basically like, yeah, when we're selling you this game, everything that you see on camera, you can see in game, as opposed to like what they usually do is they do these game trailers where they get actors and they do mocap and they paint it with the game art, but you can never actually see that in the game. Anyway, long and short of it was, I had an Xbox controller and cameras that I could put anywhere in the world. And I had unlimited freedom with where I was playing with the camera. And then this project came along and it was like, yeah, one camera never moves. That's it. And I got so, the like cinema nerd in me got so psyched by that challenge. How do you tell 36 episodes of a story from this one camera and keep it interesting? And I was like, all right, theater, like that was the first thing that I thought. I was like, let's go let's do it like theater. So you have to block it like theater, but you need to kind of like manage performances so that when they're in the background, everybody is like a little bit more theatrical, so you can get a read on what's going on. But when they get closer to the camera, you get them to sort of like bring their performances down to be a bit more nuanced, so it's a bit more like cinema. And then it was just blocking and trickery, and it's like it was a co-ed lesbian vampires. It was like there was a lot of special effects and pseudo VFX that we had none of the budget for, but it was all kind of like a part of the thing. It blew up. We shot 220 pages in 4 days, which, as you may know, is a bit ridiculous. Crazy, a lot of fun. And I knew that was our constraints. We had 4 shoot days. That was it. So I was like, okay, well, when we cast this, we have to cast theater people only, because those are the only people that really, I mean, theater people do 200 pages in a night, you know, and get up on stage and do all 5 acts of Shakespeare, X, Y, Z, or whatever. And we got lucky. We got, we dug around, and we found some wonderful and fun people. Natasha Negavalis ended up being our actress. Wonderful brain, super funny, total babe. And then Elise Bauman was the actor that we cast as Laura, the main character. And she did so much heavy lifting, because like some episodes were just her talking for 8 pages of dialogue, and she never missed a beat. Like, they were amazing. We had a great cast. Caitlin Alexander came aboard, Annie Morgan. I mean, there's like so many people. Matt O'Connor, dropping names now, but they're like, we were blessed with a great cast, and it blew up. The first 10 episodes came out. It got 10 million views right away. Kotex finally acknowledged that they were the sponsor, which I thought was great. Kotex was a sponsor of lesbian vampire thing. We never got to put like tampons into like neck bites, which I really wanted to do, but that would have been fun. And so then we got a second season. Oh, Enrico Colantoni came into to play Laura's dad, and that was just super fun. And on the heels of that, we got to the fans were pretty rambunctious. It's been translated into, I want to say, 26 different languages. It's popular in 193 countries. There's 75 million views on YouTube. And so some of these fans got really excited about the possibility of making a feature, and they helped. I think they put up about 1/3 of the $1 million budget for the feature, and we got to make the feature. And that was a relief for me, because finally I got to break out, because I did 1 episode. I was like, yeah, this is cool. Let's not move the camera. And then I got a second episode. It's like, guess what? We're not moving the camera. I was like, oh, Jesus Christ. And third episode, or third season, was like, nope, camera's still stationary camera. So when we got the feature, I was like, can we move the camera? And they're like, yes. James Faremo was the DP. We had a great crew, and we just had a lot of fun. It was a tight 14-day shoot. And it was like for all intents and purposes, mostly like a period piece. It's kind of set in this haunted castle that kind of became this kind of Victorian period piece with like special effects, VFX, stunts, a big dance scene. And we still had to wheel it in a 14-day schedule, which was crazy, but so fun. And I finally got to work with Grace Lynn Kung again, who's a buddy of mine. I met her on a show called House Party many moons ago. You'll see that in the IMDb. But it was a joy, man. It was so fun, and it did really well. It got a couple of best of features. It kind of did a circuit of the LGBTQ fests around the world, and it was the showpiece on full screen before they as a VOD service that got gobbled up.
Thanksgiving is coming up, so
Right.
best original digital program 2016 Canadian Screen Award, Fans Choice Award 2017, Small
Fans
Town
Choice
Girl
Award 2018.
Oh, really? I didn't see that one on there.
So it got, second season won the best web series award, and I think it was that year, or it might have been the next year, Natasha Negavalis won the Fans Choice Award and beat out like Yannick Bisson and Helen Joie. And in her acceptance speech, it was really funny. She got up and she was like, most of you don't know who I am. And it was true. Nobody did, because they hadn't seen Carmilla. But the fan base was so rabid and so on, and they're really, really digitally savvy and online, and they just voted from all over the world. They voted for her, so it was kind of cool. And then the next year, Elise Bauman won Fans Choice, and then the year after that, Dominique Provost Shockley, who plays a character on Winona Earp, which is a cool show. She was our evil villain in the feature film, and she won it the next year. So I'm gonna claim a hat trick of actors that I got to work with nailed the Fans Choice Award 3 years in a row, which is pretty dope.
So are you, I think I saw that you're in the DGC as a director now, which is something that automatically happens after you kind of, to an extent, put in your dues, put in your time, because it's a certain amount of legitimate hours or professional hours that you have to put in as like a professional director or whatever to reach that point. And it's like no easy, and it's a certain amount of like runtime or minutes. So that's no easy task, because you could make as many 3-minute short films as you want, but you better make 50 of them or whatever, you know, to show. So I know how hard of a task that could be. And I think you just got in or joined with them 2 or 3 years ago, or somewhat recently.
Yeah, a couple of years ago. I'd been interested in joining them. Shortly after, I want to say season 2 of Carmilla, and it won the CSA and it was doing really well. I expressed an interest in the DGC because I was curious about joining, and Hans Engel, who was the head of the sort of directors part of the DGC, was super, super kind, and he was like, yeah, we would, like, you are welcome to join on the strength of Carmilla alone, which was really kind of him. I'd had a couple of shorts that had been on TV, and I think it amounted to, like, I think I had 2/3 of the runtime credits just based on some of the shorts that I'd made that had been broadcast. But he was kind enough to acknowledge the success of Carmilla on YouTube. At the time, I think it had about 50 million views, and he was like, 50 million Elvis fans can't be wrong. And so the thing is that you still have to pay the initiation fee, and that's not insignificant. It's in the thousands of dollars, and then your dues and stuff like that. And I didn't have a show lined up that was ready to take me. I did shadow Bruce McDonald on an episode of Dark Matter season 1, which was super, super fun. Great bunch of people that were working on that. It was most of the Lost Girl cast had rolled over onto that, and Vanessa Piazza and Caitlin Brown were kind of like running things behind the scenes. And
can I pop in for just 1 second on Dark Matter?
Please.
So I applied in the DGC to get the Canadian content being made by directors and companies, and you vote essentially, I think, for the CSAs, and you get a different category every year: drama, comedy. You're voting for directors or whatever. And Dark Matter was in 1 year. I think there was 2 episodes, and man, oh man, it's just repeat hallway shot. They love their walk and talks, and they love their walk and talks down just this one specific hallway. That's what I noticed about this show. I was like, again in this hallway?
They had one hallway.
Just sit wherever the hell you were already sitting. You don't need to cut the scene to show me.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, they had this one hallway, and it looked really good. I mean, they might have overused it in a couple episodes, but I mean, Joe Malazzi and Paul, I'm losing his last name right now, were the showrunners. Paul wasn't around when I was on that episode, but they're fucking really, really lovely guys. And they asked me at one point, they were like, hey, are you DGC? And at the time I wasn't. And I was like, no, I'm not. And I'm oblivious. I've been oblivious a lot of my life, but if I had been smart, I would have been like, yes, and then just like gone outside and called Hans Engel and been like, pull the trigger, because I think like my thinking was that maybe they were like, yeah, maybe we can line them up for an episode next season or something like that. I still adore those guys, and I don't know if that was their intent or if they were just curious, but it was a great show to work on. I mean, if you've never worked with Bruce McDonald, he is the nicest man in show business, and he does wear a cowboy hat all the time. But it was just a really great time. Another surprise on that show that was kind of cool is like I got there and I didn't know who the cast was until I showed up and I got the paperwork, and I saw that the number 1 on the show for season 1 was Mark Ben David, who had played the lead on my my CFC short film Man vs. Minivan, and so I showed up and I already knew somebody in the cast. It was super cool, and it was one of the nicest sets to be on, and a big part of that I think was because of the work that Vanessa had done to keep the crew from Lost Girl. She really wanted. I think she was like one of the chief people behind it. I'm not certain, but she really wanted to keep the Lost Girl crew around and keep them going. And so, it like even season 1, it had that well-oiled machine feel. There's a real sort of family feel to the set, and it just had a really smooth vibe. It was cool. It was a fun show to be a part of for a few minutes.
You know what Bruce McDonald movie I really like is Roadkill. Have you seen Roadkill? Familiar with Roadkill?
No,
1989, Don McKellar. It's pretty good. Some nice shots, black and white, on the road type movie. It's strange and different. And you're like, portions of this feel Canadian or whatever, but it's pretty cool. And then he kind of did another one. I watched it as well. Another black and white on the road movie, but more recently from like 2016, about a guy and a girl traveling cross country in their station wagon in Newfoundland or something, or Nova Scotia. That was the more recent one. I don't know. I forget what that one's called.
That one, that sounds about right in terms of time and timing. I think he was like working on that when we were on the episode together, because he was telling me a little bit about it. It was a Nova Scotia, I think, or at least that's where he shot it. Because I remember I was scheduling something else in Halifax after that, and he and they were saying that he was gearing up to shoot there, but they were struggling for crews. They were juggling which crews were going to get what based on what shows were greenlit and stuff like that. Crazy connection to Joe Malazzi, though. Joe Malazzi had done all the Stargate stuff, and I had a role on a Stargate movie called The Ark of Truth, where I played a guy named Captain Binder, and I found out later that Binder was one of the producers. So my character was named after one of the producers on the show, so everybody had a chuckle. That was great. It was like one of those, like, we need more ammo, sir, kind of roles, but I got to play with guns on set and get paid for it. It was cool.
I think I saw that photo on your IMDb. Did you have a scar or kind of look like Dolph Lundgren, or wear like one of those military hats that's kind of like short?
Had a military hat and like glasses.
Yeah, it looked great. Yeah, it seemed like it was a blast. And Captain Binder, great name. I wrote a story with a guy named, I can't remember his Colonel or Corporal, Colonel Clam or Colonel Clamor. So, yeah, but he had two things. So Colonel Clamor, because he just destroyed, but also like the clam portion, because he never talked, never said a word. He
love it.
Clammed up. So
I love it.
So what are you working on?
And he liked clams.
No. Yes, and he also and he owns clam shop and goes diving for clams. Have you been doing anything or anything?
I spent the last. So COVID has been wild and crazy. There hasn't been a lot going on. Things have been pretty slow during COVID, and I've got two little guys. I got a almost 5-year-old and an almost 1.5-year old, and my wife works in the business as well. And when COVID kind of struck, she was gearing up on second season of a show called Transplant that she kicked off for Sphere Media. Did pretty well on CTV. They sold it to NBC, and so she's
big marketing campaign on that show. I saw there's a lot of marketing.
Yeah, if you live in Toronto anyway, I don't know if it's all over Canada, but if you live in Toronto, there's like all these this handsome guy, Hamza Hack, like on all these posters everywhere. Anyway, so she's been working like nuts, and on her mat leave, she'd produced a feature for Dennis Goulet, like worked on the script with her for many years, and it just happened to go while she was on mat leave, and so she kind of felt responsible to participate pretty significantly, and it meant that I've been doing a lot of being a dad, and then when I get a bit of a break, I've been working on a screenplay, because my only feature right now is the Carmilla feature, which is a project I'm really passionate about, but it's not from my voice. It's not a creation of my own in its entirety.
When you're writing your own stuff, are you focusing on features? Are you focusing on shorts? Are you focusing on TV, web?
100% features. I have I have a couple of scripts for shorts and stuff like that I would love to make when I have time and I'm playing with cameras and there's nothing pressing. But what I feel like my career is thirsty for is a feature in my voice. And so I've written a screenplay previously that is a little bit more, I think I wrote like kind of like more of a second feature as my first screenplay that I wrote. Was generously supported by Canada Council and HGF. So I've put that one on the shelf until I have a bit more of a first feature out. And the first feature, this is the one that I'm working on right now. It's a thriller set on a ranch, of all things. I don't have a lot of experience living on ranches, but I spent a bit of time in Alberta, and there's something like kind of captivating about the landscapes and the open spaces and the people that occupy those open spaces. And it's kind of inspired by a Stan Rogers song a little bit, and in a book called The Solace of Open Spaces, which is a nonfiction book of essays by a woman named Gretel Ehrlich. That's a whole lot of information that I don't even know if it's landing anywhere, but that's kind of where it's at.
No, that's sweet. And what do you think the budget is if you were actually able to achieve this yourself? Is it like $100,000, $150,000?
No, it's like, shit, man. I don't know. I mean, I imagine it's kind of in the sort of like 5 to 7.5 million, depending on who the cast is. But it's the kind of thing that I would like. I'd sit on it and get the right cast for it. It's the kind of thing that where I want to do a good enough job with the writing that hopefully that helps. And this kind of ties back into what we were talking earlier about it, just like my experience as an actor. Like, I want to write roles that every single role is a role that somebody's going to really, really want to play and sink their chops into. And I mean, that's where I'm going. It's a challenge because, you know, you want to blow people's minds. You want to do something that's original, and that's not the easiest thing, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. And it's really like tapping into a lot of themes that are really meaningful to me right now. Not least of which is maybe it's just being a dad and watching a lot of like the content that's made for kids, but also the content that's made for grown-ups. Like, there is a very particular view of the world that American cinema puts out and kind of endorses globally, which is the idea that there's often a personification of your problem, the villain. You know, there's good and evil, and the solution to the problem is to beat the shit out of or kill the problem. It's to like dominate the villain or the problem. And my experience in life is that there's problems, man. Problems just happen. They're not personified by a person that you have to beat up. They're like, problems happen, and what's required is people need to come together and solve them. And I mean, like, and that's not the Avengers. Like, the team coming together to solve the problem being the alien invasion is still, you have to beat up and destroy the alien invasion. And I just like, I'm really more interested in stories that are about people finding their own way through difficult times, or solutions to problems that don't involve beating the shit out of or killing or like defeating and dominating the bad guy.
Yeah, they kind of used to have those movies back in the 90s where you just needed to outwit and outsmart the bad guy. Something like A River Wild, where Kevin Bacon was like a terrifying bad guy terrorizing this family, and the dad more so outsmarted them. He didn't use too much violence. He used survival tactics and things like that. And you can still overcome and still hover around that 14A kind of category for a movie where you're still getting the younger generation but also adults or whatever, if you don't want to break that barrier of resorting to the violence. But one interesting thing that you said is you've got this thriller at a ranch, and what happens at a ranch with Western movies or that type of thing is usually people are pretty quiet, and you don't go around starting problems. Like you said, problems come to you.
Yeah.
Especially in a ranch scenario. You see those, it's in every Western movie, the guy steps out on his porch and he's like, what's this problem coming from 3 miles away? And it's just a dude slowly riding to your house. And you got to think, back in the day, No, you have no idea if this guy's coming to kill you or deliver you a good message or anything. So like you're kind of on edge the whole time. And it just kind of, when you were speaking, it kind of reminded me of A History of Violence. Like Viggo Mortensen went to hide out at his place, live a quiet life. The problem hunts him down, finds him, it comes to him. Now he did have to solve that with modern violence and his history of violence. But, you know, it just kind of reminded me of this whole Western on a ranch, trouble comes to you. You're living that quiet life and trouble comes to you and you got to outsmart them.
That's it's great. I mean, I guess the ranch setting really kind of sets it. It's a neighbor's dog. It's contemporary. It's a contemporary ranch setting, which is really, really unusual. A lot of people don't kind of think about it, but it's kind of like movies that really, you know, it's not contemporary. The James Mangold 3:10 to Yuma. Sorry for those of you who weren't here before we were recording. We were talking about Copland, but James Mangold's 3:10 to Yuma. And if you've watched the original 3:10 to Yuma, James Mangold takes it a layer further and is actually like I think it's a better film than the original. But that's one of the sort of inspirations. But then also like Hell or High Water. For me, I felt like that was a really a great contemporary Western in so many ways, so many beautiful performances and great moments. It's written by, I think that was written by the same guy who did Sicario, which is crazy because that's also kind of a Western when you think about like a lot of the themes. And
The Sopranos is a Western. Sopranos dabbles in Western themes a lot.
I've been watching a lot of Westerns as a result. I just like, because I realized like, okay, this is the territory I'm waiting in. And like, there's some Westerns that even stand up today. Like, I don't know if you ever seen The Oxbow Incident. I think it's like a 1947 film. Peter Fonda is the lead. And if you watch that, maybe it's not, I don't know if it holds up now that cancel culture has been canceled, but like there was a period of time where cancel culture was like a real thing. And I mean, maybe it still is, but the Oxbow Incident is kind of about cancel culture. I mean, I think it was really in the face of the HUAC sort of, you know, like the blacklisting and the anti-communist kind of movement in the United States. But it's just about a bunch of guys who hear that a rancher that they know has been rustled, and that there's these like drifters who come through and they form up a posse, even though it's illegal. And they go and they find these three guys and they confront the three guys, and they have a kangaroo court, you know, and there are a couple of dissenting voices in there, but it really feels it really resonates in a Trumpian era. And I watched it. I was like, man, this is what a filmmaker hopes for, is that, you know, 60 years later or 70 years later, somebody's going to come along and watch this and be like, oh, wow, that meant something to me, you know? And that's what I love about, one of the things that I like about Westerns as a genre is that they're not afraid to step up and engage in a theme. They're like, no, this is about vengeance, or this is about, duty, you know, like High Noon, fucking great film, man, like stands up today. And it's just about duty. Like the way that former sheriff looks at the people in that town at the end of the movie, you just feel it. It's, man, yeah, I like a good movie.
We'll be right back after this. One thing about you said the prairies and your Western thing, an interesting fact here is how little it's done in Toronto. I tried to get a poncho here from a wardrobe shop and couldn't even really find a good decent poncho. They had like one or two options and I reached out to a bunch of them. So you can't get anything Western or anything like that here in Toronto, oddly enough.
I believe that. You can't get a good realistic spacesuit in Toronto either. I've tried that once. That was a terrible idea. Yeah, weird, right?
Interesting.
Poncho.
Yeah, you think you should have everything, because what if someone's shooting something in a studio? What if someone's shooting a flashback or any kind of character, anything?
Yeah.
Anyways, we do a little something here called The Gauntlet.
Mm-hmm.
And for The Gauntlet, I got a couple questions for you. Spence, where does the time go?
Away. It goes
Beautiful.
away. I heard somebody said something really great. You spend your time, you trade your time for your life. So you have time, you trade it, and then you look back, and your life is what you use your time to build. So that was kind of cool.
What shape is the sky?
Sky's big. Anybody that's ever lived in the prairies or like Manitoba. The sky is bigger than all shapes. That's what I'll say.
Which apocalyptic dystopia is most possible? Zombies, cannibals, like advancements in technology, like a Black Mirror scenario, The Hunger Games, Mad Max?
Mad Max, 100%.
And is that the one that you think you would thrive in the most?
No. Shit. I don't know about where I would thrive. I feel like if it was like Elysium, I'd be on the whatever the shitty part.
Shitty Matt Damon?
Yeah. Shitty Matt Damon. I feel like, man, that's a great question. I'd say I'm going to commit to my initial choice of Mad Max. Where would I be? Would I be in the Thunderdome? Would I be in that weird place where they're all wearing like white hockey equipment and like not letting people in? Probably there. I'd probably hang out with the people in like the hockey equipment.
Why are we here?
To do our best. Just, you know,
Love it.
that's all I got.
And what does the world need most?
Oh, now you're putting songs in my head. I think kindness. I think the world needs kindness the most, and empathy. There's a lot of people here, and we're all just trying to do things. We're trying to do our best.
Fence man, thank you for being here. This was a lot of fun, a lot of laughs. You made it through the gauntlet. You survived.
Ian, thank you so much for having me, man. It's so good to see your face, man. It's great that we could do this, and you look great. And thanks for thinking of me and having me on your show.
For sure, man. You're a pleasure to talk to. And everyone, I hope you enjoy the episode. And we'll talk to you later. Take care. Bye-bye.
All right.